Hello and welcome to this Intro to STATA 16 on AU Apps tutorial. This workshop is designed to give basic understanding of how STATA works and how to use simple statistical methods to analyze data. This workshop assumes that AU Apps is being utilized rather than the local installation of STATA. This workshop is divided up into a couple of short videos. Overall, our plan is to cover how to import data into AU Apps for STATA, a little bit about the STATA environment, how to edit and recode data, how to run different statistical tests, how to create some visualizations, and how to export output out of AU apps and onto the local machine. In video 1, we're going to cover how to upload data into STATA on AU apps, provide a brief overview of our scenario we'll be using today in the dataset, an overview of the STATA environment, how to create a log file, and obtain descriptive statistics. Let me go ahead and minimize this. Currently, I am already logged into the AU Apps system. I'm going to go ahead and click on STATA IC v16 on the 3 dots in the lower right-hand corner and click on Launch from Client. And make sure you launch it from the VMware Horizon client. And now it is connecting. So while that's loading, I'll talk a little bit about the scenario. We're interested in the relationship between the amount of corruption in a country and the quality of their economy. For the data, this question, we're lucky that data already exists. We'll be using World Development Indicators, which is compiled annually from the World Bank. Nope, looks like it loaded. Let me go ahead and move this over here. So we're using the data from a previous year, and we've simplified the data set, but you can find the full data set on the worldbank.org website. We're also lucky because the World Bank saves their data in ways that make it very easy to open. Often when you find a data set, for example, old census data, it takes a lot of effort to transform the data into a usable format. And of course, there's never any guarantee that someone else has created the data set you want in advance. Often the first step of a research project is spending a lot of time looking up values to create the data that you need. Within the World Development Indicators, or WDI dataset, we're going to focus on the variables corrupt and GDPPC. The first is an index of perceived corruption within a country's government. Citizens are surveyed and asked questions like, what do you need to plan bribes to start a local business? Note that corrupt is actually reverse coded, so high scores equal low corruption. The second variable is gross domestic product per capita, which indicates how well the economy is doing scaled for population size of a country. For example, it is not very interesting to note that Botswana produces less than Brazil overall, but it might be interesting to know that Botswana produces more per citizen than Brazil in 2014. Note that in these variables from the WDI dataset, we have given over the responsibility to determine what is corruption and what is quality of the economy, what that means to the World Bank. They've operationalized it. We are also allowed dynamic concepts to become really simple numbers. However, this allows us to move quickly into later stages of analysis, which has its advantages. So there are going to be limitations. We are using cross-sectional data, so we can't really infer any sort of causal claims either. So now that STATA is open, we're going to go ahead and import our data set and take a look at it. To do that, I'm going to go to Open. And notice how it says desktop. This is actually not our desktop. You have to click on this PC. And if you scroll down, E. Schuler on AUFHRNPQZ Z drive, this is actually the local drive. Everything else is a virtualized environment from the Azure cloud, which AU Apps runs on. So I'm going to click on Network Locations. And if I scroll down, there's going to be one that says Desktop. And now I can see that there's a cs.dta. So I can go ahead and import it that way. Now, STATA allows you to do multiple things, though. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and we're going to do what's called setting the working directory. This tells STATA where is the location you want to have them work out of, or this work out of. So I'm going to go ahead and type in cd z colon slash desktop slash intro slash desktop. So cd means change directory, and I'm giving the file path. I'm typing it in this command window. Now, this command window allows you to then run commands into STATA. This central part is actually the main STATA window. So all your results, all your tables will be put within here. This left side is a history tab. This allows you to kind of know what previous ones you've run. It's sometimes called a review panel. So it has all the commands from the command window. They're entered. This allows you to easily keep track of every command you've run and run a command again if necessary. This command panel, which we're about to type into and run this is where you type syntax. This is one way to execute commands into STATA and then hit enter. Now, this isn't going to keep track of what ones you're doing for different commands. If you want to do that and have something you can go ahead and reproduce quickly, then we're going to be using a do file, which we'll talk about in a few seconds. We finally have this variable pan. So when we actually enter in data, it's going to import and have all the variable names and the labels, as well as properties of those variables listed here. You can actually customize this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and move this around a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and change our working directory. Now that we've run this, it just repeats z desktop. So that's telling us, okay, we've changed the working directory. We're now working out of our Z drive on the desktop, or our local machine specifically. Now the next thing we have is what's called a do file. We recommend that you create a do file before you start working in STATA. A do file allows you to record and save all your command lines so you can repeat those steps in the future. Now to create a new one, what you would do is you would go to Window, Do File Editor, New Do File Editor. And then you can actually type out your commands here. And then you can go ahead and if you click on Save As, because we've changed our working directory, it's going to go ahead and put it in the desktop, and they can save it that way. We're actually going to be using an existing do file for this. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is going to click on Open. Now I'm going to scroll down and find our intro to stata.do. This is our syntax. So as you might see, everything here with an asterisk is actually a comment. It has that green notation here. Commands are going to be in blue, and any options or variable names are going to be in black. File paths, like our Z drive here that we did before, that's actually going to be quoted in red text because that's a file path for a directory. Now we've already run 15, so we can skip over that. If we're working with another data set, actually let me go ahead and move this around a little bit. Make this a little bit easier to see. Okay, so if we click this, because we don't have anything listed here in a data set, it's going to actually clear those values. Okay, now that I've reconfigured that, what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to talk a little bit about entering in the data set. So again, that we're using the AU app system, because we've already set our working directory, now then we can go ahead and we're going to skip ahead a little bit and we go to line 23. It's going to load the data set. This is assuming that we're working in the working directory. If you're not quite sure where your data set is, you can always click on File, Open. You can do it that way, or import if it's a different file type. So these are all the different ones that it can open directly. You can open up SAS, SPSS, and so forth. Or you can always click on this folder, it does the same thing, and go find your .dta file. DTA is a specific data set for state of data files. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on where it says use. I'm saying what the file is and the extension type, comma, clear. This is saying if we have any other existing data set, clear it, and then open up our cs.dta. So now we can actually see we have all the names of the variables and the labels. If I wanted to, let's see, GDPPC, let's say I wanted to spell out GDPPC, I can click on this little unlock button. I can scroll down to the label and type in gross domestic product, and then just kind of relock that properties. Now we actually change the label. There's two options here. There's one, the grid with a pencil, and then a magnifying glass. If you click on the magnifying glass, that's going to open up the data set itself. So you can actually see what it looks like. All these dots here in the cells, that's saying that you have missing data. Now we're not going to talk about missing data here though, but that is a really good topic and something to always consider because that could really impact your potential estimates. Within country, they're all red. These are actually noticing that these are a string variable. You can see here str. So STATA, these are essentially just ID variables to STATA. It's not going to be able to run anything. Everything that's blue is actually what's called an encode. So it has a value label, OECD member, not OECD member. If they're a member, underneath that label is a value of 1. Below the not OECD member is a 0. The same thing for free underscore new. Here's our corruption variable, and then our GDPPC. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close out of that view. And now we're going to go ahead and create a log file. Now, within AU apps, you cannot simply copy and paste this because when you go to open up a Word document, it actually won't paste things. It's not enabled because it's a separate system. So a workaround for this is going to be actually creating a log file. So a log file stores all the results in a text file on a local machine since we can't copy and paste from the console. Now to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight 16, 17, and 18. This is saying if we have any log file already open, to close it. We're going to open a log file. If this is already here, replace it, and then run command without pausing. Now to run this, if we don't highlight the lines we want to specifically run, and if we don't do that and click here, it's going to run every single line in the do file. So you want to make sure, if you're running it line by line, highlight what you want to run, and then click on this page with the arrow. That's the execute selection. So now we actually we've created a do file, not do file, a log file. And what I'm going to do then is, there's actually on my local machine, there's now a stata.log.txt file, which will open back up at the end of this tutorial. So now we've looked at the data, we've created a log file. Let's talk about how to obtain information on descriptive statistics for one or more variables. So what we can do then is if we run line 28, that's going to give us information about the variable names, variable labels, the types. So we have double. That's just saying it's a numerical value. If there's any labels with this, and if there's a string variable, just to make sure that's one that we're not actually running any analyses on. What we can also then do is we can actually create a table of basic descriptive statistics like observations, mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum using the command sum, which is short for summary. Now, STATA is good because you can actually have the first couple of letters or the full word for summary. It doesn't matter. So if we do this and run line 30, we have our corruption in GDPPC, the number of observations. We have our means, our standard deviations, and our minimum and maximum. Now, STATA displays descriptive statistics in an option here. Now, what we can also do, because we've had this within our STATA log, it's copying out all that over too. So we can actually go ahead and we can get more information by using a comma, which is an option, and say detail. You can only have one comma in each line of the code. When we do this, it gives us percentiles. It also gives us the variance, the kurtosis, and skewness. You can also do things like codebook. Codebook provides a similar information, also tells you the ratio of how many missing out of the overall sample and how many unique values. So it's a nice feature within this. We can also do things like tab, and tab is going to create a table. This one we're in a frequency table of OECD, not OECD membership. So this gives us our frequencies, the percentage, and then the cumulative. We can also do essentially a crosstabs looking at Muslim majority and OECD, not OECD member. So here's our crosstabs table. The nice thing too within this, we can actually browse based on specific values. So if you run line 40, we're asking it, okay, show me the data. So that's going to open up the browsing option and just give me the 3 variables of interest. We can also use if statements. So open up the browse data if the country is a member and the Muslim majority. So essentially using logical operators, so equals equals means it's specifically a 1 and specifically a 1. If both those conditions are met, it's going to return Turkey. Now, one thing I want to mention before we end this video is that there's this other option too with the pencil. We did not talk about this one. If you click on this, this is actually where you can edit your data set. Now, you always want to be cautious with this because it will not keep track of what edits you're making. And if you save it and you have to go back to it, then you have to re-download the data. So always, always, always be careful with that. All right, this ends this first video of STATA. Stay tuned for the next video.